The story begins not in the marble palaces of Rome, but on the bleak, frozen frontier of the Danube River in the winter of 170 AD. The location is Carnuntum, a military fortress in what is now modern-day Austria. It is night, and a thick, freezing fog clings to the muddy ground. Inside the fortified Roman camp, thousands of legionaries are sleeping in rows of leather tents. The camp is silent, except for the crackling of watchfires and the distant howling of wolves from the dark Germanic forests. The atmosphere is heavy with the smell of wet wool, wood smoke, and the fear of an impending barbarian attack. In the center of the camp stands the praetorium, the commander's tent. Inside, a single oil lamp burns on a rough wooden table. Seated at the table is the most powerful man in the known world, Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He is 50 years old, his face gaunt and pale, his gray beard unkempt. He wears a heavy military cloak over his shoulders to ward off the chill. He is physically exhausted, his eyes are red from lack of sleep and the chronic stomach ulcers that plague him. On the table, next to a simple dagger and a map of the enemy positions, lies a scroll of papyrus. He dips a reed pen into an inkwell. He is not writing a war decree, he is not writing a letter to the Senate. He is writing a private note to himself. In small, neat Greek letters he writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This moment captures the essence of the man, a philosopher forced to be a warrior, finding peace in the middle of hell. To understand why Marcus Aurelius didn't collapse under the pressure, we must analyze his operating system, Stoicism. This wasn't just a religion, it was a psychological toolset for survival. The core of his thinking was the dichotomy of control. Marcus realized that the war, the plague, and the weather were externals, things he could not change. Worrying about them was a waste of energy. The only thing he could control was his reasoned choice, how he reacted to those events. This is evident in his journals. He constantly practiced a technique called the view from above. He would imagine himself floating high above the earth, looking down at the Roman Empire. From that height, armies looked like ants, and borders looked like lines in the sand. This perspective shrank his problems, making the terrifying seem manageable. Another tool he used was objective description. When faced with a luxury item, like a purple imperial robe, he would strip away the glamour. He wrote, "This is just sheep's wool dyed with the blood of a shellfish." When faced with fine wine, he wrote, "This is just fermented grape juice." By stripping away the emotional labels society puts on things, he maintained absolute clarity. He applied this to death itself. He didn't see death as a tragedy, but as a natural process of nature, like a leaf falling from a tree. This mental fortress allowed him to rule a crumbling world without losing his sanity. To understand the tragedy of his reign, we must look back 40 years to the height of the Pax Romana. In the glorious city of Rome, under the reign of Emperor Hadrian, the city is bathed in warm sunlight, filled with clean white marble temples, bustling markets, and citizens in colorful togas. Young Marcus, then known as Marcus Annius Verus, is a boy of 12. Unlike other aristocratic children who spend their days betting on chariot races or playing with wooden swords, Marcus is found in a quiet garden courtyard, reading scrolls of philosophy. He is serious beyond his years. Historical records state that he adopted the dress and habits of a Greek philosopher at a very young age. The young boy wears a rough, coarse wool cloak instead of the fine silk tunics of his station. In a literal act of discipline, the young Marcus refuses to sleep on his comfortable bed. He lies on the hard, cold stone floor of his bedroom, covered only by a thin animal skin. His mother enters the room, looking concerned, trying to persuade him to sleep on the bed, but the boy stubbornly refuses comfort. This behavior catches the attention of the reigning emperor Hadrian. Hadrian, an older man with a beard and intense eyes, walks with the young Marcus in the imperial gardens. He notices the boy's relentless honesty and nicknames him Verissimus, the truest one. Hadrian, having no son of his own, formulates a long-term succession plan. He adopts a respected senator named Antoninus Pius as his heir, but on one condition. At the formal ceremony, Hadrian commands Antoninus to adopt the young Marcus. It is a political contract. Marcus is not just being adopted, he is being drafted into duty. Emperor Hadrian dies, and Antoninus Pius ascends the throne. For the next 23 years, Marcus serves as the Caesar. This period is the most peaceful era in Roman history. There are no major wars. The economy is stable. Marcus, now a young man in his 20s, sits in the Senate House. He listens intently to debates, learning the intricate laws of Roman administration. He is not a warrior yet. He's a bureaucrat and a scholar. He spends his nights studying Stoic philosophy with his tutor, Junius Rusticus. Rusticus hands Marcus a copy of the Discourses of Epictetus. Marcus reads the book with intensity. Epictetus was a former slave who taught that true freedom comes from accepting what we cannot control. This book becomes the foundation of Marcus's entire psychological defense system. Despite his royal status, Marcus lives simply. He walks through the streets of Rome without a massive bodyguard detail, stopping to talk to ordinary citizens. He works from dawn until dusk, signing documents, settling legal disputes, and preparing for a job he does not truly want. In 161 AD, the long peace ends. Antoninus Pius, the gentle old emperor, dies in his villa. Marcus stands by the deathbed, holding the old man's hand. The Praetorian Guard immediately hails Marcus as imperator. The weight of the entire world now rests on his shoulders. Upon becoming emperor, Marcus makes his first major decision, one that history still debates. He refuses to rule alone. He insists that his adoptive brother, Lucius Verus, be named co-emperor. At the coronation ceremony, two ivory thrones are placed side by side. Marcus sits on one, and Lucius Verus sits on the other. This is the first time Rome has two emperors. Lucius Verus is the opposite of Marcus. Lucius is handsome, blonde, wearing extravagant jewelry, laughing loudly and drinking wine. While Marcus is stoic and serious, Lucius is a hedonist who loves parties, gambling, and actors. The Roman people cheer for the two emperors, believing this double rule means double the stability. But nature has other plans. Almost immediately after the coronation, the sky over Rome darkens with heavy rain clouds. In late 161 AD, the Tiber River floods catastrophically. The brown, muddy waters of the river burst over the banks, flooding the lower streets of Rome. Wooden grain storehouses are smashed by the torrent. Dead livestock, cows, pigs, and sheep float bloated in the streets. The floodwaters recede, leaving behind thick slime and the carcasses of animals. This leads to a famine. Angry, hungry mobs gather outside the palace, shouting for bread. Marcus does not hide. He personally inspects the damage, walking through knee-deep mud in the Forum Boarium. He orders the imperial granaries to be opened. He is not just a ruler, he was a crisis manager. While Rome is drowning in mud, a new threat strikes from the east. The Parthian Empire sees the transition of power in Rome as a weakness. They attack the Roman province of Armenia. A messenger arrives at the Senate, exhausted and covered in dust. He delivers the news. A Roman legion has been annihilated. The Parthian general has killed the Roman governor. War is declared. Marcus knows he cannot command the army. He has no military experience. He decides to send Lucius Verus to lead the legions in the east. Thousands of Roman soldiers in segmented armor march out of the city gates, their red banners flying. Lucius Verus rides a white horse, waving to the cheering crowd like a celebrity, looking forward to the glory of war. Marcus stays behind. He stands on a balcony of the Palatine Hill, watching the army leave. His face is grim. He knows that Lucius is incompetent and that the real work will be done by the generals. While Lucius parties in the east, Marcus remains in Rome to handle the boring, difficult work of governance. He sits in a room filled with stacks of wax tablets and scrolls. He is reforming laws to protect widows and orphans. He is appointing judges. He is doing the work that brings no glory, only exhaustion. The war in the east ends in victory. The Roman legions, under the command of able generals like Avidius Cassius, sack the Parthian capital of Ctesiphon. They burn the royal palace to the ground. The victorious Roman legions march back toward Rome. They are carrying immense amounts of gold, silver, and silk looted from the east. The soldiers are cheering, their armor shining in the sun. Lucius Verus returns to Rome for a magnificent triumph. He rides in a golden chariot through the Via Sacra, wearing a purple toga embroidered with gold palm trees. The crowds are thick, throwing flowers. Marcus Aurelius rides beside him, smiling politely but looking worried. But the soldiers brought back something else. Hidden among the ranks, men are coughing and collapsing. A Roman soldier sits by the side of the road, sweating profusely, his skin covered in black and red pox. This is the beginning of the Antonine Plague. Modern epidemiologists believe it was smallpox. It did not just kill, it devastated. Inside the crowded Roman tenement buildings, entire families lie dead in their beds. The famous physician Galen is in Rome. He examines a patient and writes notes on a scroll, describing the symptoms: fever, diarrhea, and skin eruptions that scab over. He looks terrified. He realizes this is not a normal sickness. The Antonine Plague was not just a health crisis, it was an economic apocalypse. Modern estimates suggest it killed 5 million people, wiping out up to 30% of the population in some areas. The immediate impact was on labor. The great silver mines of Spain, which fueled the Roman economy, are silent because the miners are dead. Without silver, the state cannot mint coins to pay the army. This forced Marcus Aurelius to make a difficult economic decision: debasement. To pay his soldiers, he had to reduce the silver purity of the denarius coin. Blacksmiths mix copper into the molten silver. The purity drops from 85% to 75%. This creates inflation. Prices soar. A loaf of bread that cost 2 asses now costs 8. Market stalls are filled with angry citizens arguing with merchants over the price of grain. The social fabric is tearing apart. Simultaneously, tax revenue collapses. With fewer farmers, there is less harvest to tax. The Roman tax collectors return to Rome with empty chests. The empire is facing bankruptcy at the exact moment it needs to fund a massive war. This is the perfect storm that Marcus had to navigate. The plague spreads like wildfire. It kills the rich and the poor indiscriminately. The streets of Rome, usually bustling with noise, are now eerily quiet.
Shops are boarded up. The market stalls in Trajan's market are empty. The death toll is so high that traditional burial rites are abandoned. Carts piled high with corpses rumble through the streets at night. The bodies are being taken to mass graves outside the city walls because there is no time for individual funerals. The economy begins to collapse. In the Italian countryside, the wheat fields are overgrown and rotting because there are no slaves or workers left alive to harvest them. In the military camps, the situation is worse. The barracks are half empty. Legionaries are dying in their bunks. The mighty Roman military machine is being hollowed out from the inside. Marcus Aurelius does not flee to a country villa like the other aristocrats. He walks through the city of Rome wearing simple robes. He's attending the funeral ceremonies of ordinary citizens. He's trying to maintain order when everyone else is panicking. In his private moments, he writes in his journal. By candlelight, he writes, "Death smiles at us all, but all a man can do is smile back." This is not poetry to him. It is a coping mechanism for the horror he sees every day. The war in the East and the plague have bankrupted the Roman treasury. There is no money to pay the soldiers defending the borders. The advisors urge Marcus to raise taxes on the people. Marcus refuses. He knows the people are already starving. Instead, he makes a decision that shocks the Senate. He stands in the form of Trajan and orders all of the imperial treasures to be brought out of the palace. It is the great auction. Tables are piled high with golden goblets, crystal vases, silk robes belonging to the empress, and precious gemstones. These are the personal possessions of the emperor. Rich merchants and senators bid on the items. Marcus stands there, watching his personal wealth being sold off piece by piece. He does not look sad, he looks determined. Marcus takes the coins from the sale and hands them directly to a military paymaster. He is literally liquidating his own lifestyle to save the state. This act cements his reputation. The common people watch from the sidelines, whispering in awe. They realize that their emperor is suffering with them, not above them. Weakness invites aggression. The Germanic tribes to the north, the Marcomanni and the Quadi, sense that Rome is dying. They see the empty watchtowers along the Danube River. A massive horde of barbarian warriors gathers on the frozen banks of the Danube. They are dressed in furs, carrying long spears and painted wooden shields. They are not a disorganized mob. They are a migrating nation, desperate for land. They cross the river. Thousands of warriors pour into Roman territory. They burn the wooden forts. They slaughter the remaining garrisons. For the first time in centuries, an enemy army invades Italy itself. The city of Aquileia in northern Italy is besieged. The smoke from burning villas rises into the winter sky. Panic hits Rome. The people think the end of the world has come. Marcus knows he must lead the army himself. Lucius Verus is reluctant, preferring the safety of the city, but Marcus forces him to go. Marcus puts on his military armor. He is not a young man anymore. He looks frail in the heavy iron cuirass. He straps on his sword. He is transforming from a philosopher into a warlord. Marcus and Lucius lead the army north. They push back the initial invasion, but the winter is harsh. The plague follows the army camps. The two emperors ride in a carriage through the snowy Alps. Lucius Verus falls violently ill. He is coughing blood. His face is pale. They try to return to Rome, but they only make it as far as Altinum. Lucius Verus lies on a bed in a roadside villa. He is dying. He looks at Marcus with fear in his eyes. The party is over. Lucius dies. Marcus sits by his bedside. Despite Lucius's incompetence and laziness, Marcus mourns him. He is now the sole emperor. There is no one else to share the burden. The funeral procession carries Lucius's body back to Rome. Marcus walks behind the hearse. He looks older, grayer, and incredibly lonely. He returns to the front lines almost immediately. Marcus stands on a hill overlooking the Danube River. The wind is blowing his red cloak. He is completely alone, staring at the dark forests of Germania. The real war, the Marcomannic Wars, is just beginning. Why did the mighty Roman legions struggle against barbarians? The answer lies in asymmetric warfare and terrain. The Roman legion was an engineering marvel designed for open-field battles. A tactical diagram of a Roman formation shows a solid wall of shields and short stabbing swords. In an open field, they were invincible meat grinders. But Germania was not an open field. It was a dense, ancient forest with swamps and hills. Roman columns march through dark, narrow forest paths. Their heavy armor makes them slow and noisy. They cannot form their famous testudo formation effectively among the trees. The Germanic tribes use guerrilla tactics. Warriors hide in the tree lines, camouflaged with mud. They launch hit-and-run ambushes, using long spears to strike, and then disappearing into the woods. They didn't fight to conquer, they fought to bleed the Romans dry. Furthermore, the Roman supply lines were overstretched. Supply wagons get stuck in the mud, their wheels broken. The Roman soldier required 3,000 calories a day to fight. Bringing that much grain to the middle of a German forest in winter was a logistical nightmare. Marcus was not just fighting an enemy, he was fighting geography. The war against the Quadi and Marcomanni drags on for years. It is a brutal, unglamorous conflict fought in the dense forests and swamps of Central Europe. Marcus Aurelius is no longer the scholar in the garden. He is a hardened campaigner living in a tent at the front lines. One event from this period becomes legendary. Historical records call it the miracle of the rain. The scene opens on a hot summer day in a valley in what is now the Czech Republic. The Roman 12th Legion is trapped. They are surrounded by a massive force of Quadi warriors on the high ridges. The Romans have been cut off from all water sources for days. Legionaries collapse from heat stroke. Their lips are cracked and bleeding. They hold their shields up, but they are too weak to fight. The Quadi warriors taunt them, waiting for the sun to finish them off. Marcus Aurelius is present. He stands among his men, not on a horse, but on the dry, dusty ground. He looks up at the cloudless blue sky. He does not panic. He raises his hands, not in a magical gesture, but in a desperate prayer to the universe. Suddenly, the sky turns black. Thunder rolls across the valley. A torrential downpour begins. It is violent and sudden. The Roman soldiers tilt their heads back, drinking the rain directly from the sky. They catch water in their helmets. They hold their shields upside down to collect the water. The relief on their faces is palpable. But the storm brings lightning. A bolt of lightning strikes the Quadi positions on the ridge, setting the dry brush on fire. The barbarians panic. The Romans, revitalized by the water, charge up the hill. It is a chaotic, muddy slaughter. The victory is attributed to divine intervention by the soldiers, but Marcus writes in his journal simply about the nature of change and endurance. He sees it as nature taking its course, not a miracle. While Marcus is fighting in the mud of the north, a rumor reaches the east. Marcus Aurelius is dead. It is false, but it spreads fast. Avidius Cassius, the governor of Syria and Rome's most brilliant general, declares himself emperor. He believes the rumor, or perhaps he starts it. Cassius stands in Antioch, surrounded by his loyal legions. He is a tall, imposing man, a true soldier. He claims that Marcus was too weak, too philosophical to rule. He wants to bring back the iron fist of old Rome. When Marcus hears the news, he does not rage. He does not order mass executions. He gathers his troops in Germania. He speaks to them calmly. He tells them he does not want civil war. He hopes Cassius will surrender so he can pardon him. "I do not fear death," Marcus says to his officers, "but I fear that the world will lose the chance to see how a Stoic forgives his enemy." The civil war ends before it begins. A centurion loyal to Marcus walks into Cassius's tent while he is sleeping. The shadow of the assassin appears on the tent wall. A messenger arrives at Marcus's camp carrying a sack. He dumps the contents on the ground. It is the severed head of Avidius Cassius. Marcus refuses to look at it. He orders the head to be buried with dignity. He burns Cassius's correspondence without reading it, so he won't know who else betrayed him. He refuses to purge the Senate. He chooses peace over revenge. Marcus returns to Rome, but he is tired. He is aging rapidly. His wife, Faustina, dies during the journey. He is now truly alone. The question of succession hangs over him. For nearly a century, Rome was ruled by the 5 good emperors, men chosen for their ability, not their bloodline. But Marcus has a son, Commodus. Commodus is a young man of 16. He is handsome, athletic, and strong, with curly blonde hair. But unlike his father, he has no interest in books. He spends his time in the gladiator training school, sparring with wooden swords, laughing cruelly when he hurts an opponent. Historians often criticize Marcus for choosing Commodus, but the reality is tragic. Commodus was the first son born to a reigning emperor in decades. If Marcus named someone else, Commodus would be executed by the new emperor to prevent civil war. Marcus had to choose between his son's life and the good of the state. He chose his son. In 177 AD, Marcus makes Commodus co-emperor. At the ceremony in the Forum, Marcus places a laurel wreath on Commodus's head. Marcus looks hopeful, perhaps deluding himself that the boy will mature. Commodus looks bored, his eyes scanning the crowd for applause. Peace does not last. The Germanic tribes revolt again. Marcus, now an old man of 58, must return to the northern frontier. He takes Commodus with him, hoping the war will teach the boy discipline. The year is 180 AD. The location is Vindobona. The winter is harsh. The plague returns to the camp. Marcus falls ill. He knows he is dying. He lies on a simple cot in his military tent. His body is frail, wasted away by years of ulcers and illness. He refuses food to hasten the end. He calls for Commodus. The young man enters the tent, wearing shining armor that had never seen battle. Marcus whispers his final advice: "Go to the rising sun," meaning focus on the east, finish the war. But Commodus is impatient. He wants to return to the parties in Rome. He listens with a blank expression. Marcus sends his son away. He covers his head with his toga, a symbol of accepting death. His last words to the guard are, Why do you weep for me? Think of the pestilence and the death of so many others. He dies alone in the dark. The Philosopher King is gone. Commodus immediately ordered the army to pack up. He signed a hasty peace treaty with the barbarians, buying them off with gold, undoing years of his father's hard work. The Roman legions marched away from the frontier, leaving the forests to the enemy. Commodus rode in a carriage, drinking wine, heading back to the Colosseum. The smoke rose from Marcus's funeral pyre. The flames consumed the body of the last man who tried to rule the world with wisdom. Civil war, military dictatorships, and economic collapse followed. The Pax Romana died in that tent with Marcus. But he left something behind. His journal, the Meditations, remained preserved through the centuries. Today, the statue of Marcus Aurelius still stands in Rome, riding his bronze horse, hand extended in peace, watching over a world that still hasn't learned his lessons.